I dare you!
Jake said. He grinned at Sam and Lily. Mia shook her head, her eyes wide.
No way! The Whispering Woods, are you crazy?
It was a Friday afternoon, and the four friends were hanging out after school. Willow Creek was a small town, and the woods were the only place that seemed interesting. Of course, the woods were also supposed to be haunted.
I'll go, but only if we all go together.
She looked pointedly at Sam. She knew he was scared, but she also knew he wouldn't let her down. Mia was still shaking her head.
Guys, this is a bad idea. Everyone knows the stories about those woods. The whispers, the lost children, the feeling of being watched. It was all too much for her.
Jake laughed.
Those are just stories, Mia. Come on, don't be a scaredy cat.
He started walking toward the edge of town where the trees began to crowd together, dark and menacing. The friends followed Jake, their footsteps hesitant at first. The sun was already starting to set, casting long shadows through the trees. The air grew colder as they ventured deeper. It was as if the woods themselves were pulling them in, deeper and deeper.
See? Nothing to be afraid of.
But even he sounded a little unsure of himself now. The wind rustled the leaves, making a soft sighing sound. It was almost like someone, or something, was whispering. Lily shivered.
Okay, maybe this wasn't such a good idea.
Her voice was barely a whisper. Sam stopped walking.
Did you hear that? That whispering? It sounded like someone said my name.
Mia grabbed Sam's arm.
Let's get out of here.
She pleaded, her voice tight with fear. But the others were frozen, listening. The whispering was getting louder now, all around them. It seemed to be coming from the trees themselves.
It's just the wind.
But his voice was shaky. He wasn't so sure anymore. The whispers were definitely forming words now. Words that sounded like their names. Words that sounded like warnings. Turn back. It's too late. You shouldn't be here. The voices seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. The friends huddled together, their eyes darting around, searching for the source of the whispers. Lily stumbled back.
Look!
She cried, pointing to a clearing ahead. In the center stood a gnarled old oak tree, its branches twisted and reaching like skeletal fingers. At the base of the tree lay a large, flat stone. It looked ancient, covered in moss and lichen. Something about the clearing felt wrong. The air hung heavy and still, as if the whispering had sucked all the life out of it. The friends exchanged nervous glances. They had gone too far to turn back now.
I don't like this.
His voice was barely a whisper. He felt a cold shiver run down his spine, and it wasn't just from the evening chill. Jake took a step closer to the tree.
Look at this.
He said, his voice hushed with awe. Carved into the ancient stone were strange symbols like nothing he had ever seen before. They seemed to glow faintly in the fading light. Mia gasped.
Those symbols, I've seen them before, in my grandmother's diary. She used to tell stories about the woods, about the lost children.
Her voice trailed off, her eyes wide with fear. Suddenly, a twig snapped behind them. The friends whirled around, their hearts pounding in their chests. But there was nothing there, only the deepening shadows and the rustling leaves.
Who's there?
Jake called out, his voice trembling slightly, but there was no answer. Only the whispers, louder now, swirling around them like a cold wind. Then they saw it. A fleeting glimpse of movement in the shadows, a pair of glowing eyes watching them, a low growl, deep and menacing. Whatever it was close. Without a word, the friends turned and ran. They didn't stop running until they burst out of the woods, gasping for breath. They had never been so scared in their lives. He had overheard their story and he had something to tell them. But then a boy named Ben approached them. They didn't believe a word of it. They told their story to anyone who would listen, but most of their classmates just laughed. The next day at school, the friends couldn't stop talking about what they had seen and heard in the woods.
Legends of lost children who were lured into the woods by whispers and never seen again. My grandfather had told me stories about the Whispering Woods.
Ben's voice was low, almost a whisper.
My grandfather said they weren't really lost. He said they were trapped by something evil in the woods.
He hesitated, then continued.
He said the only way to free them was to find their lost toys.
The friends listened in stunned silence, realizing their adventure was far from over. The friends were shaken. They couldn't ignore Ben's story. They knew they had to go back to the woods. They had to find the lost toys and free the trapped spirits.
So, armed with flashlights and determination, we returned to the clearing with the ancient tree.
The whispers were still there, but this time the friends didn't run. They knew what they had to do,
We searched the clearing, our eyes scanning every inch of the ground.
but there was no sign of any toys, just the twisted branches of the old tree and the moss-covered stone with its strange symbols. Just when they were about to give up hope, Sam noticed something.
There was a faint outline in the ground near the base of the tree. It looked like a trapdoor.
With trembling hands, the friends began to dig. The soil was loose, as if it hadn't been disturbed in years. Soon they uncovered a wooden trapdoor, old and rotten. It creaked ominously as they pried it open. A musty smell wafted up from the opening, the smell of damp earth and forgotten things. The friends peered into the darkness, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement.
What do you think is down there?
Lily whispered, her eyes wide. She was scared, but she was also determined to see this through. They had come too far to turn back now. Sam took a deep breath and climbed down the ladder, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The others followed close behind. They were in a small underground chamber, the air thick with dust and the weight of forgotten memories. The chamber was empty except for a few scattered toys, a wooden doll, a toy soldier, a faded red ball. They looked old, antique, as if they had been down there for decades, and in the center of the chamber, propped against the wall, was a cracked mirror. It glowed with a faint, eerie light. As the friends watched, images began to appear in the mirror, flickering images of children, their faces pale and sad. The lost children of Willow Creek. They were reaching out, their eyes pleading for help.
The incantation, my grandmother's diary. It had an incantation to free the spirits.
She rummaged through her backpack and pulled out a worn, leather-bound book. Flipping through the pages, she found what she was looking for. The incantation was long and complicated, but Mia recited it perfectly, her voice echoing in the silent chamber. As she spoke the last words, the mirror flashed brightly, and the images of the children disappeared. A cold wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing their flashlight beams and plunging them into darkness. The friends huddled together, their hearts racing. They could hear the whispers again, but this time they sounded different, lighter, happier, almost like laughter. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The wind died down, and the whispers faded into silence. The friends were left standing in the darkness, unsure of what had just happened. They climbed back up the ladder and out of the trapdoor. As they emerged into the clearing, they were bathed in the warm light of dawn. The woods were still and peaceful, the air fresh and clean. The whispers were gone, the lost children were free. The friends stood for a moment, letting the morning sun wash over them. They had faced their fears and emerged stronger than ever before. They had solved the mystery of the Whispering Woods and freed the trapped spirits. And they had done it together. As they made their way out of the woods, they knew they would never forget